Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us here at the St. George's Baptist Church as we continue to do what we believe is helpful, not just to your spiritual, but to your physical life to live here on earth. I am Pastor Stanford Simon, pastor of the St. George's Baptist Church. It's always a pleasure. It's a time when we have our Bible study, but including in our Bible study in 2022, we're having every third Thursday of the month, we're having financial planning, financial session, to understand yourself, maybe doing will, dealing with issues of the law, but to be able to educate the community, not only about going to heaven, but also how do we live here on earth. And so I'm happy and delighted for the opportunity to be able to share with you this evening some very interesting thoughts. Not me would be sharing it for sure. I'm not a financial person. Mr. Devon Charles would come to do that, but I'll leave that up to Sister Matonia Monroe, who would come and introduce him to you. But Devon is a dear friend of mine. We've been friends for many, many years, and trust me, he's one of the best we have when it comes to finances in our country. And I'm sure tonight what he'll share with us will be very helpful and very meaningful to many of you who are listening. And for those of you who are online, please share the link with your friends and family members, because I do believe when you think about budgeting, when you think about your own finances, where you are, saving and all of that, it's always a challenge for us. And I do believe that many of us would learn a whole lot this evening. I invite you to stand with me as we pray and we get right into the meat of our matter this evening. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for who you are. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to serve. Lord, we thank you for our minds and our hearts. We thank you for this church and, God, our willingness to learn and to open ourselves to the possibility. We thank you, God, for Mr. Devon Charles, who will be sharing with us this evening on financing, financial planning. Oh, God, we pray your leadership over him, your wisdom over him, Lord, that we would observe and learn how best can we live, Lord, and manage our finances. I thank you for this opportunity. We pray a blessing over these sessions. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. Welcome again to St. George's Baptist Church. Personal financial planning. I now invite the person who is in charge of this session, really, Sister Matonia Monroe, who is our treasurer for our church. I invite her now to come to speak with you a bit and to introduce Mr. Devon Charles.
Good evening, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be in the house of the Lord, and it's even more of a pleasure to be able to use his wisdom and many of the various things that he has given to us as individuals, how we can use that back to edify ourselves. Tonight, our session is going to be led by none other than Mr. Devon Charles, and I am tasked with the responsibility of just giving you somewhat of his professional and academic profile. So, Mr. Devon Charles started his membership with the Grenville Cooperative Credit Union as but a child. At the age of 22, he became the manager. At the age of 24, he started working at the Grenville Cooperative Credit Union, and he then became the general manager thereafter. He has had a stint of up to 28 years in the credit union, and of course has amassed significant experience within that field or that area of business and financing. In terms of his academic qualifications and certification profile, Mr. Charles holds ACCA, so he's ACCA qualified. He also holds a master's in professional accountancy. He also holds a master's with Dobie University in global finance. Apart from that, he's an accredited director. In terms of his professional certifications with the University of Cornell, he holds certifications in executive leadership, performance management, and strategic change initiative. Locally, in terms of his leadership portfolio, he's the chair of the Grenada Lottery Authority. He's also the chair of the National Stadium Authority. He's a member of the Consumer Tribunal. He is deputy director of the Caribbean Microfinance, and he's also chair of finance at the T.A. Marisha Community College. So he shies no wealth of knowledge when it comes to understanding finance, and tonight I have the distinct pleasure to introduce him. One of the things that I can say about him personally is that he's a strong and effective communicator. Even though he holds these qualifications, he makes very, very complex things seem very easy. So, Mr. Charles, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the platform And from here on out, I hand over to you, sir.
I don't stand there, right?
No, you don't.
Thank you very much, Matunia, and for those kind words, Pastor. And good night to everyone. I'm happy to be here, and I am looking forward to hearing from you. When I was asked to do a presentation to you, Matunia said to me, she's asking me to come and have a conversation. So I just asked Pastor if he has a second mic, because it is not my intention to sit here, to stand here and talk to you for an hour and a half. All right, because we were speaking of a topic that we are all quite familiar with in terms of financing. And lots of time when we speak of financing, we speak about numbers, and I know a lot of us don't like the numbers too much. Sometimes I don't like it too. What I will attempt to do tonight is move away from the numbers a bit, because before you can attain wealth, there are other disciplines that you must acquire. So that's where I want us to take the conversation tonight. And I chose our sharing, and it's our sharing is going to edify all of us. And thereafter tonight, we are going to be able to share some thoughts that we would be able to learn from, because I intend to learn from you too as we go forward. So just some housekeeping, I will be moving about. I don't know everyone so well, so I'm going to adopt church protocols. Sister, brother, pastor, you'd allow me to do that, right? Thank you very much, right? So just to give you an outlook as to what I want to talk about tonight, because Matunia gave me a very long list, right? She said to me, budgeting, investment, financial institutions, and the list went on. So I had to actually take a certain perspective as to how I wanted us to have this discussion tonight, right? So let me just share with you an overview of what I want to speak on, and I have also left a spot for we to speak. So anything that I didn't touch and you would like to talk about, I am quite open to doing that. And this gentleman here, Maurice, is my assistant. If the slides fail to move forward, I am not responsible. He's the one responsible. So thank you. Let's go. All right, so this is the approach I would like us to take tonight. Let us chat a little bit about why personal financial planning. And that's a question that I want to put to you. We will talk about that, right? We also want to look at what financial planning is about. I know you know, and that's why I say we're having a conversation, right? Who needs financial planning? I want us to chat about this a bit. And when does that start? Some of us believe that only when we start working and we have money in our pocket, we must start planning. I have a different view, right? And how do you go about starting a financial plan? That's the discipline that we want to speak about tonight. And we're going to share a bit on budgeting. Don't be scared, we won't be getting into numbers tonight. And thereafterwards, we are going to have some open conversations in terms of the areas that I did not have on the slides that you would like to share about, right? So let's talk, right? You have the mic? I want you to move around. I want you to be at the back of the mic, because my slide starts with question, right? And I have posited these few ideas here as it relates to why personal financial planning. And these are my thoughts. And I show when Matunia, when you agreed that we needed to have this session in terms of personal financial planning, something jumped out. And I thought that might be some of the reasons that you are wanting to have this session. And I see some persons writing, don't write. I'm going to leave the slides with Pastor, right? Attaining financial independence. Is anyone here totally financially independent? If you are, let me see your hands. You are, right? So we need this session, right? But when we say financial independence, you know what we are speaking about? We don't need to go to the bank, right? Our bills are already paid, right? But even though you are financially independent, you must stay financially independent, right? So, and to do that, you need personal financial planning, right? So that's the first reason I believe that we must be having this conversation, because we all want to attain a greater level of financial independence. We will never be totally financially independent. Those of us who observe independence, and you hear all different discourse about independence. We are independent or we are not independent. You are independent in certain things. You could never be totally independent. We agree? Yes. Right? So we want to attain some level of financial comfort, some level of financial independence, right? We want to know our status, right? And I bet you most of us don't want to know our financial status. Do we know our financial status? Brother, do we know? Fully, partially, right? And why we don't want to know our financial status? Because most of the time we don't like what we see. Huh? Or we may have to write it. And we are fearful as to what to expect. That is why, another reason that I believe, but we need to know. Because if you don't know where we are, how are you going to know where you're going? So we need, I like this other one. We need to protect our credibility, right? Right? And Pastor, I put that one there specifically for us. Many of us fail to appreciate how our credibility could be adversely impacted if we fail to pay our bills. And sometimes you're not in a position to pay the bills, not because you don't want to pay. Sometimes you are willing, but you're unable, right? But based on how you do things, you could maintain your credibility, right? So let us remember, even though we cannot pay the bills now, as many of us may not be able to, we need to communicate, right? We need to be able to have the conversation so that we maintain financial credibility. That's another reason that I have shared with you. And I would want to hear from you as it relates to why you believe we need that also. And some of us dream. Some of us dream about getting rich. We dream about a lot of things. We want to go to Disney World, right? Pastor, you wouldn't mind. Some persons here want to go to Vegas, right? I know you wouldn't mind. Anybody here doesn't want to go to Vegas? Right? So, we dream a lot. We dream a lot, and as a result of that, it does not mean that our dreams cannot come true. But we have to start somewhere, right? As it relates to why is it that I must sit down and plan, right? Anyone wants to share with me another reason why you believe we need this session? And I want to hear you. I want to hear you because I'm not saying anything that you don't know, right? Let me hear from you, and as you share, let me know your name so that the next time I come around, I could call you by your name. Let me hear someone talk to me.
Okay, good night. My name is Rikisha, and this session is important because at times we may get ourselves in a situation where we're just spending our money useless on things that is not even necessary to us. Sometimes we spend the things on more on what we want than the things that we need in our life. Exactly.
But generally, we spend money on things that we want, Our needs always come after, right? So great, right? Anyone else would like to share their thoughts? Let me hear from you. All right, so, because my list is not finished, because I want us to have an appreciation as to, right, when you decided whether you were doing financial planning or you were doing lending, I'm sure you would have had some consensus. So let's start the conversation. Let me hear from your sister.
Good evening, Amanda.
Amanda,
and
thanks.
I would say, as we refer to the golden years, our later years when we are no longer actively earning, we need to have that in mind.
Very well. Anyone else? I just want you to just think a little bit and ask yourself, why do you think you need to plan your finances?
Good evening, my name is Brian. I think we should plan our finances because I believe money should make money for me.
Exactly.
Yes.
All right. Did we think about one gentleman here. Let me hear from him.
Good evening. Paul is the name. I think also it puts us in a position to be able to leave an inheritance for who's coming after us.
All right, good. There are different thoughts on that, right? You know, as some of us get older, we sell our big mansions and we live in smaller houses. Yeah? And if you really love the church, you would give the church your money. Pastor? Why do you think as Americans get older, they live in smaller houses? Let's go to the next slide, because the next slide, this slide here, I want you to have a look at it. Taking care of our personal obligations, commitments, family, education, medical bills, investment, debt, emergency, charity, and the list goes on. Is there anything you want to add to this list? I posit it there, but I believe first and foremost, this is why we must plan. I see kids around, I see middle-aged persons around, and I see persons that in their golden years. This is what I believe, this is principally why I believe we need financial planning. So all that we have shared comes back to this, right? We all want to make sure that our families are happy. They are comfortable, right? And to make your family or your household comfortable, Pastor, along with spirituality, you need money. Right? And when I do financial presentations, you know, there is this cliche, no money, no love, right? And you could take that to however you want it. But think about it deeply, right? Think about having no money and think about what kind of love you will have. Just think about it, right? So it is important that we do so that we can identify the gaps in our financial position and take steps to fix it. And I think that's what we are talking about tonight. So based on what we have shared thus far, I'm thinking that we are laying the platform for a real conversation, right? And some of us obviously want to accumulate wealth. Everybody wants to accumulate wealth for different reasons, right? So I think this is the approach that we want to follow tonight as it relates to how we move forward. Let us move to the next slide. Right? Have a look. Right? When you know your numbers, the financial numbers, right? The guesswork is over. You must know the numbers. And I can bet you we don't know the numbers. Or we don't want to know the numbers. We really don't want to know the numbers. So we continue to guess. So we live a life cycle of guessing. We estimate. We estimate what the electricity bill is going to be this month. We estimate what the bus fee is going to be. We estimate everything. Right? We go to the grocery and we approximate. You didn't leave home and know, I have $200. And this is the debts that I have. And this is the obligations I have on Monday. So I can only afford to spend $150. We guess, right? So we need to know the numbers. And if you understand where you stand, right, you're on your way to fixing it, as we said in the last slide. These slides are here just for you to share and get an appreciation as to what we're speaking about. But we're not speaking about plenty numbers tonight, right? This one is not on me, it's on him, right? Right. So what financial planning is about, right? So we now know why we want to do this session, right? And I'm putting to you that financial planning has a lot to do with your ability to make sound financial decisions, right? It is the art of developing financial discipline. And I don't have to tell you what discipline is, right? You need spiritual discipline too. If you don't have that, you might miss this session tonight, right? And to do that, you must have an awareness as to your environment, right? And I want to stick a pin there a little while because all of us know that there are HP, there is Coates. We have other entities that do microfinancing. we have credit unions, we have banks, and so on. Do we really have a good appreciation as to the institutions that we do business with, especially where we do deposits, we invest monies, how sound those funds are? When we put monies in investments, can we say that I know that I can sleep comfortable at nights? Right? What do we know about these institutions? What due diligence have we done? I'm challenging you that before you invest your funds, that's a responsibility that you have. When you proceed to borrow, do you sit and compare finance costs? Many times, I have the experience where persons call and they ask, what is the interest rate? And loans. And they call all institutions. Do you really honestly believe if somebody says, if a banker says the interest rate is 15% or 10%, you understand what that really means in terms of the financial implication over 5 to 10 years? Have you asked, what are the other costs that is involved in the financial transaction? If I fail to pay my debt on time, are there penalties? These are questions that we ask. And when we speak interest rate, go to the financial institution and ask them to show you how it is calculated. Don't call on the phone. And now we have technology. So you can go on your computer, you can download an amortization, and you have a good enough indication as to what is it I will pay on this loan. You need to do in other words, you need to do scenario analysis. You need to gather data from the different institutions. What is the interest rate? What is the repayment period? What is the length of the loan? Because the length of a loan, the amortization period, has implication for the amount of interest you pay at the end of the day. Many of us don't know that, right? What is common in our environment? We want quick service. So I call a financial institution or I call a HP company, and it's Christmas, so I want a television. And if I'm going to get the television from the HP company faster than it's going to take me to get a loan, I go with that. I'm not interested in the cost. Let me stick a pin. My friend has a comment.
I have a question though, right? I would technically not say that we do not ask about these things in them, but it's the way it is presented to us, because some of the banks and credit unions and so forth is either they put it in fine print with some long paper and some long words, and then the time frame people have when they go to these places is like, okay, I have an hour for lunch and you come giving me this long paper with all this bunch of words to sit down and read, and like, how am I supposed to read all of that within an hour and get back to work on time and all this kind of stuff in them? I mean...
Okay. After you have gotten the finance, do you want to maintain your financial credibility? It comes back. And by the very fact that those prints are so small, right? In other words, you need to mind your business. You need to take time to mind your financial business, and we're going to speak about that. So that's why you must be aware of the environment. Now, when you relate with a financial institution, what you are doing is building a relationship. And we always need finance. So you must make a determination as to whether or not the relationship I want with this institution is short, medium, or long term. And as you go along, based on the quality of the service that you get, based on the level of disclosure, based on what is written in the news about that institution, it gives you a good indication as to whether or not you are comfortable enough in doing business with that particular institution. You agree? So if you are not doing it, right, maybe when you need to go to negotiate your finance, you need to take some time off from work. Not just a lunch hour, right? You should wait until it's vacation. So when I get vacation, just as how I go to see the doctor, I put aside time to go to the financial institution. Let me hear my brother here. Oh, I thought you wanted the mic. Right? So we agreeing? But it's a fact that many times those fine prints are not meant for you to read. So lesson number 1, do business with an institution where you can read the fine prints. That is big enough that you could read it. Right? That's the lesson I would give you. And you want to be able to build relationships with any institution that you're going to do business with. Whether you are purchasing a service, or you are buying an item, or you're taking out a loan, you want to make sure that institution, you are comfortable. Right? Unless there are those, of course, on the other side who don't have any interest in being credible. They can't be bothered about financial planning. So they say to you, when that time comes, I deal with that time. I don't think none of us here is thinking along that line. So you must make time to ensure that you have the information. So when you make decisions, you are making decisions from a very informed place. Right? Good. Along with that, we also want to ensure, right, that we can meet our financial obligations when they are due. And I think that is the crux of what we face every day, right? I believe that there are more of us who cannot meet our financial obligations when they are due than those who could, right? For a lot of reasons that we are responsible for. And based on the environment that we are in now, right? I see the Ukraine colors at the back of the church. I don't know if it's a coincidence, right? And maybe Pastor might be giving a message, right? That has implication. You look at oil prices and so on globally, that is already moving up, right? In the bigger countries, you see steps already being taken. The discussion is poverty in energy and person's ability to pay for energy, right? Maybe we're not having the conversation, but it's coming home. We look at the price of building material, right, and how it has skyrocketed within a short space of time, right? The slowdown in the supply-demand chain and the impact it's having on global economies, right? So salaries are not going to rise simultaneously with these prices, right? If you think it's not going to rise. And therefore, you need to pay particular attention to how you are managing your inflows and your outflows. Put simply, try not to let your outflow be more than your inflow. In other words, when the money comes, don't spend more than you earn. Now, you can't get away from the fact that we have obligations that are due at fixed time of the year, whether it's insurance, whether it's property tax, whether it's tuition. And in your plan, as we're going to speak a little about budget later, you should know when these obligations become due. So you know in a particular month, I have certain fees to pay. So maybe there are other things that I do less, right? And it may look small. There is about 20 working days in a month, huh? So think about you paying bus every day, you're buying lunch, and we do a lot of other things. If we cut that back by a week, this week we're not paying any bus to go to work, but we are carpooling. And maybe this is a good environment to speak of this, because I expect the congregation to be less selfish. Right? Are you? Right? I believe, so these little things. When you go to the grocery, we see prices going up. Right? Do we buy for 2 weeks, or do we still buy for 1 week and then we take transportation and go back to the grocery? So you say you're not buying the £2 this week, you buy £1, but at the end of the week, you have to pay transportation again, and you have to use gas to go back to the grocery. Think about it. Look at the numbers. What is more economical? And it has to do all with measuring your inflows in terms of your salary and other forms of income as against what you are spending when the month comes, right? Moving slow, right? And we are still speaking of financial planning, right? And as we get here, I'm saying to you that financial planning is a process, right? Financial planning is not a product. You don't go to the credit union at the bank, or you go to Coates and you buy financial planning. You might buy a software, right? That might show you how to do financial planning. But if you don't have the discipline, it can't happen. So we started where we are to say to you, let us put things in the perspective, because it's a process. Saying to your colleague, this week, let us carpool, is a process. I do it this week, next week you do it. And that carpool I'm speaking about doesn't only have to do with going to work. We have few large supermarkets, and the ladies like to go to the supermarkets, right? Ladies going to the supermarket on a Saturday could be a social moment on a lime, yeah? You could save some cost out of that. And you see, and you all benefit from the process, right? So this is something that you need to pay attention to. Start looking at that planning process. And when you start speaking about planning, that planning process, you have to then determine, what are my goals? And what are my objectives when it comes to financial planning? And I want to speak a little on that at this point in time, because we started with some goals. We had some big dreams. Some of us wanted to go to Vegas. Some of us want to get rich. Some of us want to acquire wealth. But how do we do that? And nothing is wrong with having those goals. But what you must do with those goals, you must be able to bring those goals into objectives. And if you decide to take those goals and bring them into objectives, and we have these acronyms that we use when we speak about objectives, we call it SMART. When you start speaking about objectives, that's where you start putting pen to paper. That's where you start getting specific. That's where you start measuring things. That's where you start looking at how achievable it is. What is it that I am thinking? How relevant it is based on my circumstances. And when is it, by what time, I would like to achieve those objectives. So just think about it for a while. We have shared here some financial goals. And we say that those goals are long-term, right? So we say that I want to own a car. I would like to own a car. And I put forward that as a goal or as a dream. How can we transform that into an objective? Somebody help me. Saying to yourself that I want to own a car, does that take you anywhere? Unless you start getting specific. So what is specific? By when you want to own that car? Somebody wants to share at the back.
No, I was saying probably I would like to own a car by 2024.
Right. You're specific about that, and you're specific about the time, right? What kind of car you want to own?
BMW.
A BMW. Wow. Right? So you must measure that, right? What are you measuring that against? Are you measuring that against what other persons are driving, or are you measuring that against your salary?
Against my salary?
You measure that, okay. So based on your disposable income, right? By 2024, you could measure that, right? And you could achieve it by that time based on your salary. You know, most of us don't think about that. And you would be able to determine that it is achievable, right? I like to use an example that in the mortgage industry, that you realize that a lot of persons in our society own big houses. And for those in the financial sector who have a good enough indication as to, we have what is called debt servicing ratio. And we say to persons, based on your debt servicing ratio, this is the amount of debt you should get into. You should not go beyond that, right? This is what happens. Everybody has a plan for 3 or 4 bedrooms, and this is the house that they want. And they come to you and they ask you, what is the interest rate? And what is the down payment? Right? Instead of asking, this is my salary. This is my age. Based on my salary and my age, what house can I afford at this point in time? That is part of the reason that we have so many persons. I don't like to use the word poverty, but living on the breadline, because we all want a big house. And that big house is for the next 20 to 30 years. And taking us back to where we were, could you make a decision that is going to have an impact on you for 30 years in your lunch hour? Could you? Could you call a financial institution that you don't have a relationship with, or you don't know the numbers, the interest rate, and you're making a decision for the next 30 years? And let us remember, that 30-year decision that you're making is not just on the house. We live in a consumption society. And when you have the big house, it has to be maintained. And do you see persons with big houses driving small cars? Huh? It doesn't happen. Right? It's a rarity. Because as you project that superior lifestyle, yeah, the house, the cars that complement the house. The dress code has to complement the house. When you go to the gas station, you're not putting $20 gas. But they're doing it not because they're comfortable, right? It's the signs of poverty. Signs of poverty. These are the same persons that are traveling every year, right? So we have designed our culturally, right? We are designed in a way that we live a lifetime of poverty, right? And earlier we mentioned that one of the reasons that we need financial planning is to ensure that we can pay tuition, we can send our kids to school, and many other things, right? And another example that we see all the time is that because of the fact that we fail to plan, we only realize that we want our kids to become doctors and lawyers when they finish MCC. At that time, you're close to retirement. So you're going to mortgage your property. Right? So what you are doing, you are dying fast. Because when these kids, especially those that go overseas and study, what percentage return? And the house that you have built was built in 1970. Right? The new generation ain't living in that property. Right? So they're not too perturbed as it relates to whether or not that mortgage is paid. And you see it every day. A lot of parents doing everything that could be done. My son is in university. You're not proud to say that your son is a police officer or a nurse, or to have the real conversation with the child and say, this is our financial position, right? And we can support you to go to university, but you must go to work first. Or we must do it incrementally, right? Because we want to create a picture to our kids that is better than it actually is. Another real reason that a lot of persons are dying fast, right? And we see it, huh? We see it, right? When a lot of these kids, not all, some come back, right? But when many persons go overseas to study and the comparison is that I now have my degree, I can work for the small salary here. That's what we see, and I'm speaking local language, right? So I am not coming back, right? I'm not coming back. And my brother said a while ago earlier that part of the reason that you need financial plan is that you can leave your inheritance to someone, right? And I want to challenge your thinking to ask you, do we have the right to leave another generation in debt? In other words, do you have a right, as parents, to take out loans and so on and to build up debt and to leave it for your kids to pay? Right? But you know that's the reality. Most times, persons go to a bank to take out a mortgage or a loan for education. They say to you, my son or my daughter is going to study and they will be back in 5 years. Let me pay the interest. When they come back, they're going to pay the loan. That happens all the time. That's the reality of the society that we live in. So when we speak of the fact that a lot of us appear to be living in poverty, apart from the macro factors, we are responsible to a large bit. There is a famous example, and this is the last example I'm going to share, where salaries of persons were docked some time ago, a few days' salary, right? And our conversation has nothing to do with the docking of the salary, but the impact it has on persons' ability. Some persons have not recovered from that as yet. Some persons have not recovered as yet. So we need to develop financial discipline. That's what we're saying, right? We need to know where we are, and the decisions that we make must be guided by knowing the numbers. I saw a hand. I know somebody wants to say something.
I was technical. What I wanted to say was, due to the salary and so forth, right? When people go to these institutions, they ask them to bring the necessary documents, right? And looking at the documents, you know for a fact that, hey, you have too much stuff already on your hand. And you as a customer rep or the loan officer are trying to explain that to them, and then that customer now will get on unruly and stuff with you because due to the fact that, okay, they want the money and they want the money urgently and I want this money today. And when you explain to them, hey, you know, this is the situation you have at hand and stuff like that, sometimes they will leave and they will have a whole set of negative things to say about our company. And then that looking bad for that company, no. How is it that, you know, you're supposed to deal with a situation like that?
It happens all the time, right? You know, we started by talking about building relationships. And if you build relationships with your financial institution, there are some financial institutions that seek to develop people. Because they are owned by people, right? And there are others that are owned by a few shareholders. And the objective is to make the most profit. I say no more on this one. I say no more in terms of this particular one, right? But you're correct. The last time I did a session on, of this nature, someone said to me, I went to a financial institution and I gave them all of the information. And it was Christmas. And I didn't get a loan, right? And my response was, maybe it was the right thing. Because the financial institution, you cannot afford. And the person said, well, I went to a next institution and I lied. And I got a loan very quick. Right? Remember we spoke about credibility, right? So you may get the short-term satisfaction. But in the long term, right, it comes back to bite you and bite you very hard. And a lot of us are in that position, right? So the person who sits behind the desk also have a purpose, the lender. And based on the lender's purpose, that is going to guide you. You would be able to determine what advice I give that borrower. So sometimes not getting the loan is a good thing. Right, Antonia?
So I wanted to just make a comment on something that you said. I think being able to touch on the cultural practices, Grenada specifically, when you mentioned whether or not it is right for parents to leave debts for children. And of course, I'm sure you have seen it in your experience as well. There is a cultural practice of parents. As soon as a child has completed, whether it is times CC, they then say to that child, this is your compensation. This is your contribution back to me. And I have seen it. 18, 19-year-olds are coming in with parents to sign 30-year-long mortgages. And what you find when they get to a place where they are ready to have a family, they can't. They can't construct a house. They can't buy a car. They can't educate themselves. So this is really an important discussion, and I think part of the problem that we're having or seeing financially is really tied into our cultural belief system here in Grenada, and I would just like for you to speak a little bit about that, and I really hope a lot of younger children, because some of them are guilted into it, they make them feel ungrateful if they decide to say, well, mom or dad, I can't do this because I have these aspirations. So I would like for you to speak a little bit on that.
Good. And I'm happy that not much young people in the audience, but we have a few, maybe they're online, right? It comes back to what we're going to talk about a little later in terms of how we bring all of this together. But the reality is, most of us don't know our financial position, and we want to impress our kids. Right? I want to talk about the partners yet. Right? We can talk about that just now. Right? When we have open conversation. But that is the reality. Right? And what we see happening in our society, the financial decisions that we make, they are not made based on our ability, our capacity, but it is more or less to follow a pattern. So someone else is doing so. Everyone's financial circumstance is uniquely different. It's like your fingerprint, right? And sometimes, because you cannot determine someone's financial position on the surface. You may see someone doing a very mediocre job. They may be earning more than you, right? Or sometimes they're not earning more, but they're saving more because they're not into superior spending. The income is small, so people still buy back a neck. Some of us feed our dogs and back a neck, right? So at a very, very early age, right, apart from attempting to instill financial discipline in our kids, and that discipline must start as you give them money to go to school. That's where you must start, right? You want to make sure that they are comfortable. You want to make sure that, and not just the financial planning, but the same cultural practices that you speak about, because when students are exposed to the school system, right, a lot of peer pressure is brought to bear. And that's why before the kids leave home, you must let them know what the circumstances are. If you could cook food and give them to go to school, and it's going to cost you cheaper, it's better to do it than to give them the monies and the extra monies because that is what their friends are doing, right? Let us use an example, gadgets. Almost every school child has a gadget. I'm not speaking about the government devices. I'm speaking about the real Apple, iPhone, and so on, right? And phone and chip. So you must look at those signals, the conversations that the kids bring home, right? And these are triggers because they do come home and they have the conversations, what they would like to have. And you must be able to sit your kid down and say, look, this is where we are at this point in time. But if we do A, B, C, all right, eventually we will get there. Because those who have, you really don't know where they get it. And there are a lot of strange stories that you come across as it relates to kids with gadgets and games. I read a very sad story over the weekend in one of the islands where, over the gaming, a young man, 17-year-old, killed his sister over the password for the internet. Right? And the story went like this, that they would have changed the password because he's addicted to these games. Right? And created a whole fracas in the house. Right? And his mom went in to cool him down. She couldn't. The sister went in. And he locked her in the neck. And the story went on that they cried out to him. He didn't let her go. They called the police. When the police came, she was already dead and he was locking her neck still. The story is on the internet. Right? I say it's a story, but it's a news item. Right? And we are seeing now more and more kids are getting addicted to these devices and so on. So when we speak of culture and we speak of what happened to our kids socially, there's a lot to be done in that area and so on. And if we don't pay attention and you can't give them the devices, they won't find it. So you must have the conversation with them now, right?
A hot no. Yes, Brother Devon.
And I know probably, I love being our brother tonight.
You see, that's how you're going to refer to us tonight, brothers and sisters. So you're Brother Devon tonight.
All right.
You made a statement before Matonia spoke in terms of some institution, they're seeking to help people financially, while some are there for profit.
Yeah.
All right.
Let me rephrase that before you go forward.
Okay.
All right. The philosophy of some institutions, based on the premise that they have been built on, it's about people.
Okay.
Right? They are owned by people. The shareholders are the people. They make the decisions.
Okay.
Right? So every person who is a part of that institution is a shareholder. Right? Versus other institutions where those institutions are owned by a small group of people who wields a lot of wealth and influence.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So while that may be true,
Yes.
I want to say that, or suggest to that particular institution who seek to help people that they should try to also seek to help the loan officers first. Yeah? Because in many cases, these people who sits on the desk, some of them have not achieved anything, and you go in there to think. Sometimes they give you a very hard time, which is not necessary, but just because of where they are financially, they figure you shouldn't succeed, or why you going there now. And I'm saying this with an experience I had, myself and my wife, all in our game, about 20, 22, 23 years, when we had an offer to buy a piece of land in a very prestigious place now, and it was going for 50 cents a square feet. We went to the institution, and they thought we were too young. And the lady literally told us, why all you want to buy land now? All you too young for that, And she didn't discourage us, but we lost interest in that thing. Now, today, these land are going for almost $20-25 a square feet, So, but just because these people there, and you expect them to advise you, and based on the advice you get, you may just trust it, and it may not help you in the long run. So I just saying that I would like to see these people be a little more financially stable themselves. Because if you are financially stable, you might be willing to help me. But when you see somebody is trying to succeed and moving and you down here, sometimes jealousy, greed, and sometimes the people know you, They know your ambition, they see your progress, and somehow they figure, personality steps in and figure, well, I want to give them a loan, this or this. And sometimes they have personal grievance too because they see in your achievement. So all these things comes into play based on where you go and who your loan officers. All these things come in play and make it very difficult for somebody who might be genuine and may be able to pay back. And you don't have to, because one thing I realize about we black people, we just pay we bill. We will suck salt, we'll drink water, but we just pay we bills. You know, especially Grenadians. That's the last money, but they paying their bill. They don't care how tomorrow will be, but they will pay their bill. So I just saying this to say that I think these people who we go to, you know, and expect them to advise us properly, so then they don't always seek our best interests. Yeah.
Well, you know what we are doing tonight? We are taking the power from them and bringing it into our hands. Because I am anticipating that our conversation is going to make all of us a bit smarter. Yeah? So we don't have to go to the institutions as though we are begging. And you're correct. It happens all the time, right? Because why? We go to these institutions very vulnerable. All institutions. Most of the time we go very vulnerable. But if we start the process, as we're starting tonight, so the next time I go for a loan, I am not going and beg. I'm using the local word. Right? I'm going to say, this is my situation. Or even before I do that, I can sit down and know whether or not I'm in a position to afford a loan at a particular time. And if I could, at what rate? How much I can afford to pay more than I'm paying? I must be able to calculate. Many of us, we have all of these ways now we can do our own calculations, and so on. So we start in some way, but you're correct. Right? When you said, and I don't want to have a risk conversation, but one of the conversations that we have when we speak about who pays, what's the ratio to men to women here tonight? Right? We'll talk about that in open talk. Let me take this gentleman here, and then I'll come to you. Right?
Good night, Mr. Charles. Historically,
Brother Devon, I have my title.
Brother Devon.
I want to be consistent with my title tonight. Thank you.
Historically, I would consider Grenadians to be a nation that saves money, especially with the credit unions. Now what we are seeing now, because the credit unions are on up and up, we are now seeing that other financial institutions are advertising loans with high exposure, or you need very little
collateral
yes. To come forward. What advice would you say if to us who wants to save, and an attractive offer come up, we don't want to touch our money, but in terms of taking a loan, what advice can you give us?
In the last set of slides, where we're going to have an open conversation, I have a note there. Expectation of lenders and borrowers, savers and borrowers. Right? Hold that question. Let's talk about that when we get there. So we can have a very open conversation about that. Right? But I'll make a note of it. Right? I have a question here.
Okay, so it's a comment. And earlier we talked about the discipline aspect,
yes.
Right? And we should not move away from the discipline aspect, because financial planning requires a lot of discipline. And having sat in the position of as a credit officer myself for over 20 years, 23 years,
good.
Almost 23 years, in my sector, your sector kind of looks at us as rigid. And we know why. We have different guidelines and measuring sticks. But I would say the rigid system helps people, kind of forces you into the discipline aspect. Because if you look at the debt servicing, which we mentioned earlier, the rule of 40% or 35%, it's generally 35, but you're forced to stretch it based on conditions. You want business, and you want to make people happy, so it goes to 40 at times. But basically, you need 60% of what you earn to handle the rest of your life, your well-being, especially emergency cases. And that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
People come and they just know, you're my bank, this is my salary, I'm making that every month. I want.
Yes.
And it's dangerous when we step out of the guidelines. So when Brian was mentioning about the institutions being there to help us, we may satisfy the immediate desire, want, even need. You may say, okay, based on my job, I need to get a vacation every year. But you do not qualify for a vacation every year if you can't save for a vacation every year. You should not be taking a loan every year to get a vacation.
Correct.
And so those are the kinds of pressures that institutions face because their members come and they more or less demand that. And you succumb to it. And it was quite sad at one point. That's a story I think of all the time when I encountered certain individual who came and she was so distraught. And she thought, okay, the institutions that brought her into the place where her debt servicing was 84%. 84. And she was in a dire situation at the time. She came to me and I said, but you know, there is absolutely nothing we can do to help you because your situation is this. And she left in a very distraught state. She was at a point of tears. But we are the people who know. When you sit in those positions, you know, but the financial institution should not succumb to the pressures of the customer just to say, okay, I have to help you. And just because they're going to leave thinking, maybe you have something personal against them, you don't want to see them this, different things. You almost have to take the role of a financial counselor at times, especially you see a young man just got a job, he seemed to be doing well, he may come to you and he wants a fancy car. And that's a conversation I always had with young men. I say, when you get a car, what you think will happen? You're going to line with your friends more. Your friends going to want you to go out every weekend. What's going to happen? You're going to be spending more. If you wait a while and you save and you look at a piece of land, and when you own the land and you pay off the land, you have more power. As we say, making your money make money for you.
Yes.
And so that is a role I think financial institutions need to help discipline your people so that they can achieve more. Because it's like children. You come and you want and you want and you want and you think it's just available to you because the market makes it just available to you. But in the long run, are we doing them good or are we doing them harm for their financial betterment?
Well
So
said.
I like
right?
the discipline in that.
Yes. And we could have that conversation all night from the perspective of the institution, the one that we're having now, in terms of educating people, right? And it comes to where sympathy meets empathy, right? My friend said earlier, right? And we wouldn't. I do not want us to spend time comparing the institutions. Matunia did ask me to speak about that, but I removed that from my slides, right? I did remove it from my slides, right? But the reality is, right? We are a consumption society. We are ill-disciplined when it comes to our finances, and that's what we are speaking about, right? Some institution guard their money more. Some institution guard their money more. It's a small group of persons' monies. So they guard their monies to ensure that shareholder wealth is added, right? In others, you look at the core values, and there is this thing, it's our money and it's our institution, right? And we finance people battle with that every day, right? So you put it correctly, right? So we won't be speaking about that because it depends on how you look at it, right? We won't be speaking about that part tonight. But you're correct, the discipline, right? The discipline in what is happening. We can use an example of, we just had COVID. And we're thinking that it's the end of the year, we are just coming out of COVID. So persons would not be traveling, changing the couch, shopping, right? But really trying to get back on their feet. But November, December appeared to be normal. Everybody was looking for a Christmas loan, right? And if you see some of the recent trends, since the COVID mandates and so on have been removed, and the social events and the crowds. So the question is, we have lost our jobs, we have more bills, we're not paying our bills, right? But how is it that all of these events are full of people? They're not free, right? And those shows and so on that I note, they are not local persons putting on who are getting the money from these events. Comes back again to, are we for real? Just before we move forward, I just wanted to get back on the matter of housing, right? And as I drive around and I look at the housing communities that have been built, I think they refer to as the Chinese houses, right? And I ask myself, in time to come, is this going to be the model of our housing? Generally. Are we going to continue to be able to buy land and build houses? Or as a society, is that where we're going to end up, where we're going to have investors building these apartments, private persons, and selling you a quarter? I want you to ponder on it. Because as I look ahead, that is what I'm saying, right? But you know, to many of us, based on where we are now, we don't want to live in an apartment, right? And we want the yard space, we want car space, and so on, right? It's something that we need to ponder as we think about where the housing stock is going, right? And maybe we also need to ask ourselves, what percentage of our persons who own homes or who have mortgages are going to pay off those mortgages before the age of retirement and be able to live comfortable, right? And that should be the question that we ask ourselves, that should maybe slow us down in terms of the decisions that we are making now. Because you cannot reverse what you have already done. But as you go forward, you can change certain things. As you said, travel less. You don't have to travel every year. And should you really be taking a loan to travel? A vacation should be planned. So if you intend to go on a vacation next year, you start planning now. So you can't live the same way now on the same salary and expect to travel next year, right? Put aside some savings, do something less, be a little more conservative. Because there are some activities, right? I don't know if you're going to beat up on me on that one. I see persons take loans to get married. I don't see pastor wrong, but I see that happening. I don't know if he's right or it's wrong. I have my view on it, right? There are some activities that just naturally, that you plan. And you plan those, and you must have a little skin in the game. So there are some activities that you definitely should avoid having to take out a loan, because that is where, but what has happened, funding has become very easy. A car loan is maybe the easiest loan to negotiate, right? And we have become so bold that we are going to pay the car loan, but we're not paying the mortgage, right? Because on the other side, we have become so smart that we know this property and selling for the next 10 years. But if the bank should come, the financial institution should repossess my vehicle, right? Before they reach in the yard, everybody knows. Come back to culture and our thinking and so on. So a lot of the times, the priorities are mixed up. But you want to ask me to have a real conversation, so that's what I'm doing. Right? It's not personal. It's just how it is, right? I wanted us to ask ourselves, in terms of financial planning, and I put this slide there so we could ponder a bit as it relates to who needs financial planning. People who are unemployed. I want somebody to ask, to share with us whether or not you believe that they need financial planning and why. Could someone take the mic? I would like to hear from you. Unemployed persons. Do unemployed persons need financial planning? Yeah? In other words, we agree here that all of these groups of persons need financial planning? Anyone want to share their own thoughts on any one of these groups? Debt-free people, do they need financial planning? Somebody tell me why. Debt-free persons, do they need financial planning? Tell us why. Yes. All right. So I think we have been speaking about persons who are basically income, who are working and so thus far, right? Unemployed persons need more financial planning than persons who, right? Because while you're unemployed, your debt continues to rise. Your financial credibility is being lost. And if you don't manage that correctly, but if you practice proper financial planning while you're employed, while you are employed, you are able to continue to control your financial costs. Let us look at when COVID surfaced. Financial institutions were offering moratorium and loans. And many persons rushed at that. Did you ask, what is the implication down the line? You didn't. Is there a financial cost? Did you ask yourself, if I put aside a little extra savings at the end of the month, or I tie that to the loan? I know persons who were able to do that. So they were able to continue to pay their loans because they had that savings put aside there to pay their loans. And the advantage of that is that they did not have to incur additional financial costs. There are persons who are still unemployed. And whereas they have been allowed some forbearance, when they eventually start paying again, the cost is more. They have gotten a little older. So if that loan should have been paid back at age 60, right? And the financial institution is so steep that it's not going to allow you to go to 62. It means that your payment has to increase immediately. The only way we can address that is planning for the eventuality, right? Persons who are self-employed, you wanted to come in, right? Sure.
Recently I was in a conversation, right? And the advice was maintain your savings, get a credit card, and live off of that. You could pay the minimum, and you get points, you don't have to buy tickets to travel and all of that. Could you expound on that a little?
Do you know what is the, right, and let me make a disclaimer. So let me be very careful. When service is provided to you, easy access, ask yourself what's the cost. That's how I'm going to answer you, right? Easy access, ask yourself what's the cost. And if you find the cost to be ridiculous, stay away from it. If you cannot afford the cost, stay away from it. And measure it from the standpoint that if I'm getting 2% on my saving, and I take this card out, and I'm paying 16%, I don't know what the rate is. I'm just using a figure, right? So in other words, I am achieving negative 14%. What you are doing is eroding your savings. Because you have not withdrawn that savings, but you are either using your salary or using another source. And the erosion of that saving does not have to be the physical saving that is here. Because what you leave here, it is supplemented by another source. Right? I hope I am clear enough. I'm trying to be I'm trying to be careful. Right? Does that satisfy you? All right.
I would say that with the right discipline, however, I think it would be to the customer's advantage to use the credit card. Once you're able to pay it off in full, the balance, pay it off in full by the end of the month, then it will be advantageous to you.
Okay.
But you have to be really disciplined.
All right. Put simple, the effect of money is a net plus and a net minus. And that's where the whole issue of the financial decisions that we make. You know, if we apply more financial discipline as we have been saying all night, we have less loans. And we see tomorrow better. So financial costs, right? There are times, right? There are other opportunities that the card may give you, right? Some persons like the comfort of knowing that I have my savings there and I could use a card, right? So I have access to a card and I don't have to use my savings. If I have an emergency, I could draw down from my savings. But over a period of time, you know the interest on that card could have gone into your savings and increase your savings. We know it's easier said than done, right? But we like the convenience. So, and we have also shared, the discipline is not there. Right? You know when you have the card in the middle of the night, you get up and you want to shop?
Yeah. My name is Trevor. With regard to the cards, and this is something I think some people do not discuss with their financial institution some of the things that they can do that would benefit them. So for instance, every credit card or debit card I have had has been tied to my account. So that when it becomes due, it's automatically paid. So I get the benefit of the card, and they never get a cent interest from me.
All right. So you heard that, right? In volume. Most of us have a credit card and not a debit card in volume. We also have to look at the environment and the volume of transactions that we're doing, right? And every financial institution or financial product or service has its purpose. It depends on what you are doing when. So if you don't need a card, you don't need a card. Based on the business transactions that you are doing, you may need a card. They all have the pluses and the minuses. Because as an entrepreneur, if I can use a card and I can get my points, because I am supposed to travel, I would get discounts. The volume of my transactions are large. That's a good thing. As against someone who has a card for having a card sick, just for consumption purposes, right? So you said it rightly. Apart from the institution sharing with you, we now know when you go to the financial institution, tell me about this card. What are the implications for me having this card? What is the interest rate, right? What are the benefits? And we don't ask those questions because we want a card, right? That's what it is. Right? Antonia. The mic?
Yes, so there's only one thing I would like to add to that. When you said that she told you you could leave your money, we don't think about it, but the bank, yes, is a direct impact, so their fees and maintenance charges, yes, but inflation. So there is something called the time value of money. So even though you're looking at $10,000 there from point A to point Z, you have to also consider what's happening in your external environment. What kind of policies government is making? Is there rising charges on food prices? Is there rising interest costs? Because the worth of that money is actually what you need to look at. So money should really never be just sitting. Money should always be actively working, because if you're being told, leave it there and just, take the card, to me, that's bad advice off the bat. Because while you may not, in an upfront manner, experience that diminishing value, the fact is, especially now, $5 is just not $5. So I think I would just want us to look at it that way as well, and also consider what's happening around us when these people are giving us advice. All right?
And do our research. Do your research, right?
Yes.
That is... Go right ahead.
So, Brother Devon, I've been listening to you whole night and I'm a little confused. But I think that is why you're here.
Exactly.
So you want to clear up my confusion. Yeah?
Yes.
Everything makes financial sense. Yeah? But my confusion is based on our environment and our salary structure, it's very difficult for anybody to save 5 years to make a purchase of this large magnitude. Because, I mean, while you're trying to save that $40 every month, the fridge breaking down, the stove going bad, the washing machine go mash up. You're trying because you only have so much to work with. So I will save $20 every month. And I constantly decided that I'm doing that. But in my quest of trying to purchase that piece of land 5 years from now, that same salary I have to take out from that saving to check the fridge or to buy a new this or a new appliance, not because it's needs. So this is not wants. These are things that depreciate and mash up and it's needs. So you have to also still trying to maintain all these little gadgets you have that makes your life easier. You may have a car and you have to still. So it's because you're working 3 and 4 jobs and it still doesn't, it still can't help you, you know. So I think we serve just be people who just basically working for this financial institution, because while we may not want to go and borrow the money, but how much choices do we have? Yeah? How much choice? You're working in a work for 10, 15 years and you're making $1,500. Yeah? And we talk about inflation. We still have to compete with the high prices in the supermarket and everything. So we have so much to deal with, but yet with so little to work with. You know, sometimes I wonder, I say Grenadians are the best financial managers in the world. Because I don't know how some of us make it. I really don't know. So speak a little to that for me, please, because I'm a little confused.
Am I hearing that you have resigned yourself to a life of poverty?
No. I'm saying that it's so much wheel and dealing and dandling to really achieve your goals. And I'm saying if, as a young person, well, not a young person, but generally anybody, if you really want to make some achievement or something, the most viable option is to go to that.
All right.
It's not like we want to, but that is the best. That is what is more easily and available to you.
All right.
You know?
So you see why we had that slide, goals and objectives? Yeah? You come back to a very simple thing. Stay within your means. Stay in your lane. You heard? The car, the fridge. Now, when we purchase a fridge will last us a lifetime. So you might take the loan for the first one. You know the average life of the fridge now is how much? 3 years? Yeah? 5? Yeah? So you just realize 2 lessons, as we said. There are some items that you best not take a loan for. We spoke about the travel, right? A lot of the consumption items. But when we start taking out loans for consumption, we're changing the couches, we're changing the fridge. But after you take the loan for the first one, start putting aside, you know that it's going to cost you, that's going to last you 5 years. But start putting aside a little $25, $30, right? That the fridge money down next time around. So instead of you have to borrow $5,000, you might need to borrow $2,500. Right? Right? And that's the challenge that we face. And you live out a very, and the part, and it comes back to what we said earlier. The kids have to go to school. We want to give them what they want, right? It comes back to the board of discipline. Yeah? Remember, know your status, right? We need to know our status, right? And there are some unmentioned things that happens that continuously keep us in debt. Go right ahead.
I want to encourage, because it seems like it's working for me. Yes. Let me make this, because it's really working for me, because that's the only how I believe I could save right now.
Yes.
If none of you have a cash box, get a cash box. Because before I get it, I throw it down there and then I wonder, boy, you know what, that bill to pay? And I can't get it out.
Yeah.
If I put that in the credit union or I put that in the bank, tomorrow morning I walk in and I punch in my card and I take it out because I need. But when I throw it in that cash bag, I have to mash it up.
Financial discipline.
Well, that's where I found my discipline.
Right? Financial discipline, right? But this is a real conversation, right? And if we don't plan, we are living a life of poverty. A lot of us, that's where we are heading, right? Do we have any self-employed persons here? All right. Is there any one of you who don't pay yourself a salary? You're self-employed. You pay yourself a salary. You don't pay yourself a salary. You just start, so you don't pay yourself a salary. Pastor, do you pay yourself a salary? You just start. Right? Friends, you know, that is one of another issue that pervades our business community, where we have the most brilliant ideas to open business. Open shop, open all kind of businesses. Buy a bus, and so on. We're making money, right? And there is no separation between the business and yourself. Ask yourself, if I had the funds to invest in that business and I had to get someone to run the business, what I was going to pay them? We see small businesses failing every day, right? And that is the main reason, one of the main reasons that you see businesses fail, because we are not getting to the point that we are separating ourselves from the business. The business income is your income, right? And many times, you ask yourself, what has happened? You have taken out a loan to start that business. You have interest on the loan. And your intention is that your sales, with a little margin, a very small margin, is going to restock, pay the loan, right? And take care of the utilities, all of the overheads, and keep the business going. And people seem not to get that, right? So I want to encourage us, right? Don't pay yourself a big salary if you haven't been paying yourself as yet, right? You also need to ensure that you look at the social side, think down the line. Do you have an NS card? Are you paying your NS? I'm not asking if you pay now. If you're not doing, you need to pay. Do you have an insurance, right? And there are a lot of insurance products now that can cushion you in difficult times, especially if you're self-employed. Because we're coming out of COVID, and persons who work with government and who have a permanent job, they didn't feel the impact as bad as those of you who are self-employed. And even as you emerge, when you emerge now, one of the things that you're saying, a lot of persons seem to have these ideas to set up the same kind of businesses that were shut down during COVID. Persons are still opening bars, new food outlets, and so on. Ask yourself. So all of the persons who have been doing that, and they're still on the market, are they shutting down? Who is the market I am focusing on? How are you going to survive? You need to ask yourself those questions, right? Because you're seeing that trend emerging again. So there have been programs by government where funds are available, and everybody have an idea now. I'm going to set up, and the same sort of business ideas. Nothing outside of the box, and there are so many opportunities now where persons can become more innovative, and the technology is there. We need to become creative. That advice is for those of us who are self-employed. Let us use the technology to our advancement, right? Retired persons. Well, if you plan well, when you get to retirement, you'll be okay. I don't know if you could start a plan when you retire, right? Because we have a generation in debt, right? And the same thing we spoke earlier as it relates to teenagers and kids, and the fact that we need to inculcate these lessons in them, right? And if they're debt-free, don't manage their finances, they would eventually become indebted, right? So while it is good to be debt-free, you have to manage that very closely, right? I don't know how many persons within the system are able to stay debt-free forever, right? Unless you have some very large inheritance, but eventually that dries up, right? So let us start from here, right? Let us start. Based on what we are sharing, I should there is a listener too, based on what you have shared and what we are speaking about, that you can contemplate. Let me do something a little bit different, right? So let us start now, right? I want to pause here just for a little bit to hear from you. If anyone have any comments that they would like to share with the audience or any thoughts, I like to do that because we are engaging, right? The floor is open.
You know, Matune usually tell me when money gets in my hand, it disappears. So I always say money have wings. And I do realize with the discussion that is being had tonight that I need more discipline. You know,
Great.
I honestly, I do. If I go the road and I see something related to fishing, let's say bait or a line, or I think about fishing, I go and get it. And add to what I have. But now I realize it makes more sense, you know, even though Matune has been pounding in my head, you need a plan. Maybe I needed to hear it from somebody else, you know. But I know that is what I'm taking away tonight, that I need to be more focused, more disciplined when it comes to finances.
Very well. Matune, you set me up, right?
Yeah, I mean, what you said tonight, I don't think it's the first time I heard it, but I think it's the first time he start thinking. Simply because somewhat like Desmond, I figure it's my money and I can use it when I want it. You know?
Exactly.
I'm working hard for it, it's mine, and nobody should tell me how to spend my money. That was my concept and idea in terms of money. But lately, I realized I could have been a lot more financially free if I would have had a little more discipline, you know. So, because, you know, you can't give what you don't have, you know. But I realized I need to change the way I do things because, yes, I want to get out of debt. I want to travel. I want to have nice things, you know. But I can't constantly doing this thing in debt, you know. So lately I've been thinking about
you are now convinced that you don't want to live a lifetime of poverty. Great.
Yeah, how I can do this thing so I start planning. I start thinking along this line. So the $5 I would have, and I say, well, let me take a bus, I will walk. I'm consciously making this decision now. It's not like, you know, I'm choosing to buy a bottle of water for $3 than to buy a soda for $4 or $5, you know. So, and these are conscious decisions I'm making now, whereas I just go and I just buy something because you feel hungry. I'm hungry now, and I say, well, I'm going home, I will get something to eat instead of trying to go and buy something outside.
You said you was confused?
Well, no, I was, but I'm getting it right. So, but the next thing I want to say is that, you see, our society to have a way that could keep you in debt or keep you in poverty, you know, based on the system and how we do things. So, for example, let me give you a typical example. You are a young man and you're striving and you're trying to do things and you go for help by, let's say the government institutions and stuff like that. They say, oh, he have a big job, man, he working there, so you don't get that help. But if you're vulnerable and you're poor, you're getting a house tomorrow morning. You're getting stove, you're getting fridge, you're getting a fully furnished house because you're considered vulnerable. They bring in water for your grocery, you're getting everything. So it doesn't feel good to be vulnerable because you who's striving and trying to make two ends meet, nobody trying to give you a hand up, you know, because you have a job and he works in this company and that. So they figure, well, you're good. Yeah. You don't need help, you know. But the person who in poverty, they're getting everything. And that's why a lot of us in that state, not because we want to be in poverty, we choose to be in that state because it's easy money. And a mountain we go and we get money in the treasury, we have our claim to get, we get everything. So why wouldn't I want to come out in a life like that? It's a nice place to be. Yeah.
You're so right? I happy that while I was confusing you, I achieved convincing you. But you're right. You're so right. We have someone over here.
Yeah, good night, everybody. In financial terms, right, there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy, right? Mm-hmm. My question is, knowing how Grenada is set up, do you think the ground is moist enough for Grenada, for young Grenadians to become wealthy in terms of leaving something for your children and to pass on to generations?
All right. I like that question. Hold that question there, because there is a section that I have, Let's Talk, that I want us to take all of these questions, right? So let me finish the principal slides, and we come back to that. Who is leaving who for what, right?
Pleasant good night, Mr. Devon.
Brother Devon. I have been given a new title tonight.
What do you want to say, mister? My name is Allison, and I'm glad I came here tonight because it gave me, open my eyes a little more. Especially, I've been having a lot of problems with, I wouldn't say problems, feeling very uneasy with when, you're in a bank and then they change, merge. I was like so walking on edge with this new bank because the people just not behaving right. And I'm always going there and we always having, this fight to pay your bills and stuff like that. So I know now it's my duty to have a meeting, request a meeting so I could go in to see where the loan, and all those things. Because somehow I always say, I'm saying it's low. Republic Bank, I never wanted to be in that bank.
Yes.
So I am in another, and now they merge. So when I go in there, I know they always look at me and smile because I'm just not happy with them. So I'm going to have a meeting. I had a bad experience with them many years ago when I was much younger.
Okay.
And there God just put them in my lap. Well, he maybe wants me to be more a little tolerant and so. So I'm going to go in and speak with them and things like that.
Wonderful.
And mind my business. See what's going on with me. Because I'm retired now. And I think, too, a lot of us retirees, I don't know if we see it that way, but I hope we shouldn't be thinking that way. A lot of us work very hard over the years, and we have made a lot of contribution. And somehow we feel that the country owes us, they owe us big time.
A lot of us think so.
Not rolling it out to us.
Yeah.
So sometimes I say, hey, if my fridge ain't working, I should just get a fridge. Why I had to be going and ask for a fridge? Because I think I make, I try not to think that way, but sometimes I feel that way. And it happens. So somebody might say, girl, I hear your fridge ain't working.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we go fix you up. That type of thing. You mold people, and you know what, maybe whatever. But as you say, you're supposed to plan and not sit down and expect to get things, because you see what's happening with all this pension and people not having anything, and you have to fight with it. Also on the note of the credit card, I remember when I was offered a credit card, I took it, and not thinking, well, down the line, what is it for me? But like 6 years ago, I think, I got an opportunity through the government to go on a fellowship to the States. Like go to see programs that run for children and vulnerable and so. So I went. Nobody else didn't want to go, so they said, Alison, you like to go, and I jumped. And I couldn't believe this. For every state, I went to 6 different states. When you had to travel, the ticket didn't have like the inland taxes, whatever, on the ticket. So when I go to check in, they're like, you have to pay $100 US. Thank God I had a credit card.
Because for 6 states, I had to
Yes.
pay 100, US. So when I come back now, the long line and the bill and all them
Yes.
things with the government people in the treasury to get the money back. So sometimes you have to think about all of this. I'm
Yes.
going, who will compensate me and stuff. So sometimes it's good to have a credit
Yes,
card. 'Cause
of course.
if I didn't have one, imagine me staying in Ohio.
Yeah.
Where I gonna go?
Yeah.
I don't know anybody there. So praise the Lord, I had
Exactly.
one. So sometimes it have its
Yes.
good
So
and it have its
at a particular time, you must decide where I'm at, what I'm doing, and the purpose I am doing this. So everything have its time and place. I sure you hear that more than me, right? Friends, having done these sessions for a while, and that's why tonight I said we are not looking at financial numbers, right? And I don't think I had bad judgment because it appears that what we are speaking about is a lot about financial discipline, right? Over a period of time, I have coined 3 simple steps that I believe if we follow, we can do better. And we have spoken about it already. But I want to remind you of those, right? And let us chat about it a bit, one by one. You won't find that in a finance book, right? But I believe that is how we can help ourselves in terms of how we go forward, right? And the first one is, let's talk about this. We need to be honest with ourselves. I see Pastor in upstairs. Friends, when it comes to finance, our engagement with financial institutions, right? And many of us are guilty of that, misrepresenting the numbers. Not even to the financial institutions. In life, right? We always attempt to create an impression that we own more than we own. Am I wrong? We always try to give the impression that we have more disposable income than we actually do. And you have worked in finance, so you know, right? And it is not just to the financial institution, and a social level, and a relationship level. Maurice is here, right? And I brought him for a particular reason. Right? And I say to persons, on a social level, when you get into relationship with persons, know the debt. Yeah? Know the debt. We're having a real conversation. Because having worked in the sector and having seen some things, you get into situations and so on. You're not getting into a relationship for what the person have financially, right? But if the debt is unsustainable, you can have serious problems down the line, right? And we see that all the time. Do we understate our expenses or we overstate it? We always understating our expenses. Yeah? So we are responsible for the situation that we're in. The debt, we never know how much debt we have, approximately, but we know how much savings we have. We know the savings in the back of our head. The savings is a small amount. The debt, which is in thousands, you never know the exact amount. You have an idea, right? And sometimes we forget how many financial institutions we have debt in. And this is something that we see happen, our recurrent expenditure, right? Some of us have lease payments, so we go to a financial institution or to negotiate financing. And remember, we have documented debt. But those that are undocumented, some of us have lease arrangement. We are renting, right? We have SUSU unpaid. It happens, right? Let's try and be honest, right? That's my first lesson to you. Let's go to the next slide, Maurice, right? And it continues here, right? A lot of the times we have maturing obligations, right? So things are smooth now, right? But you go to negotiate a loan this month, and you say, this is my disposable income. But you are not making provisions or saying to your lender or whoever you are borrowing from, look, I have insurance and taxes to pay next month. We're in a tax season now. We have property tax, right? Many of us have vehicles in a particular time. Do we put aside money at the start of the year to say, I know I have to inspect my vehicle every year and pay my insurance, so I'm putting it aside? How many of us do that? Right? Few. But it's unavoidable expenses that you have to pay, right? If you don't, you know what it feels like to know that the inspection time is here and you did not inspect your vehicle and you have to pack it up? At that $50 that you have to pay extra, but yet for all, we don't plan. We expect that within the first half of the year, that money is going to just fall from somewhere. Some of us have property, right? We want to sell it. We always overstay the value, right? Sometimes you're not selling, but you want to assess your equity. You are doing different things. You may be giving it, handing it over to someone, transferring it, or you're using it to help you to negotiate financing. And we always overstate, right? And we always believe that we have more than we have. So we speak about what we have. We don't speak about what we owe. We always speak about the assets. We don't speak about the liabilities. Huh? So if you have $10 in the bank and you owe in the bank 20, do you really have anything? But when you talk about, friends, let's try and be honest, right? Let us be honest with the numbers. And if we are honest with the numbers, that's my first lesson to you in terms of helping you to get out of poverty, right? My second lesson has to do, again, with being honest. Stick to your word. I show Pastor tell you that all the time. Right? Your word is your bond. Right? When you say you're going to do it. Right? So stick to your financial commitment at all times. It doesn't matter. And I know there is a pecking order who you decide to pay. Right? Don't misrepresent your inflows and your outflows so that you acquire too much of debt. And when the end of the month comes, you have to decide, well, I'm going to pay the bank this month. Next month, I'm going to pay my susu. I'm going to defer the electricity, and so on. Right? Let your word be your bond. And if you are honest, it would make life easier for you in terms of how you are able to pay your debts. Don't overcommit yourself. Right? And as you said, how are we going to get out of poverty? Because the fridge needs fixing, the car needs changing, but we need to ensure that we start developing this financial plan. So, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's a long process, right? And I'm thinking I am almost there. My final advice as it relates to how we get there, that's my 3 steps, right? Apply sound judgment to your financial decision-making process, right? Don't attempt to be the expert. Seek out information. Right? And I think that's why we are here this evening, right? We don't have to know it all, right? Mind your business, right? Right? If you mind your business more, don't go to negotiate a loan and lunch hour. Put aside time to do it. Ask questions, right? And if we do that, seek out some financial advice, right? Be aware of the financial environment, the products and services that are offered. We have spoken about it, right? These are my 3 steps that you wouldn't find in a financial literature that I believe that can help us in terms of how we move forward. Let me stick up in there. Anyone wants to tell me if that could work, or this is a challenge for you to practice? Just 3 small steps. The mic is yours.
Just 2 observations. One, you mentioned about persons, when they approach a financial institution, they overstate
Yes, they overstate the income.
They overstate the income.
Yes.
And then they understate the expenditures. And I think one of the reasons is because if they do the opposite, the bank would refuse them the loan. That's number 1, right?
You came in late, right?
Yeah, came in as late.
Okay. We said earlier, we shared an experience where somebody went to a financial institution and they were very honest and they didn't get a loan. And then they went to a next institution, another institution, and they clouded the numbers and they got you very quickly. So you're so correct.
Right, but I think what probably can happen, and in some cases the bank but mostly the bank don't do. They don't say to you, listen, you cannot get the quantum of the loan that you applied for, right? But based on your situation, we'll be able to give you something less than that. Sometimes all they come and say, sorry, your loan is not approved, and they just dismiss you. My other point is that, I've worked in financial institutions before, and one of the things that I've come to realize, and I would advise young persons in particular, number one, when you start working, after you buy your corned beef and something for a month, because most young people say when they start to work and they get their first pay, they're buying things that they never had the privilege of buying before. So make yourself feel good and buy that which you want. But after that, you should consider opening an account, and I want to use the liberty to say with the credit union. And one of the reasons is because with the bank is for profit. The credit union is member helping member to good effect. So the bank will not encourage you to save at all, but they'll encourage you to take loan, because when you take a loan, you may pay 9, 10, 11, 12, 14% interest, but when they have to give you interest, it's 3 or 4%. They give you a very minimal interest. Now with the credit union is about saving your money, so you're creating a nest egg so that when you have a need, you can tap into it and you can take some money. And even when you get a loan, the credit union ensures that while you're paying back that loan, you're saving. My experience is when I started to work, the cleaner or the office attendant said, Yvette, every month you must save at $20 with the credit union. Let them take out that $20 and put in the credit union for you. Open an account and let them put the $20. And I wasn't working for much, $200 and something a month in those days. But I said, okay. And so every month this $20 is going into my account. Then I decided, let me increase it to 30. I went to 50. And I decided I was not going to take out any money. And after a couple of years, when I went to check on my savings, I was shocked to see the amount of thousands I had saved. And when I took a loan, I was able to continue saving. This is one of the benefits of the credit union. And the other thing is, make sure that if you need a vehicle, fine. But to me, one of the best investment, apart from setting up a business that you know is viable, because business is about risk, is buying a portion of land. Because the land, you can mortgage and get your house. If you're living with your parents, you can rent it. And remember, land do not depreciate except there is some civil unrest or some natural disaster. It always appreciates. So you buy a piece of land this year for $30,000, next year you could sell it and get what? 35, almost 40,000 for it, right? So you have to be smart or astute in your business. And my final point is, when it comes to insurance, please, people, please, once you start working, get a health insurance. The life insurance is not so much about you, except your parents put you on a plan very early and then it matures and you get a little money back from it. But a health insurance is crucial simply because life is very inevitable and unpredictable. And these days, if you don't have a health insurance, you'll be like these people where almost every Saturday a truck is going around and saying, people, please donate for me so-and-so who have a kidney failure, who have some kind of problem. But a health insurance is crucial. If you could afford a life insurance, because nowadays when you take a loan, they're telling you, especially the banks, you must have a life insurance. But the life insurance is really not to your benefit. It is the benefit of the financial institution. So that if something happens to you and you cannot repay the loan, they're covered. So really it's not caring so much about you. It's about them ensuring that they lose no money at all. The money is secured. So let's be very prudent. If you have children, put your children in on your health insurance very early. Because if you don't have that, especially in Grenada, especially in the hospital here, you see the rate of death that's happening where simple things that people could live. I went to the hospital recently, and the lady was going to take the blood pressure for a man who was so sick. She said, oh God, the blood pressure machine ain't working. No matter what she do, it ain't working. So she just gave up. The man eventually died. So I'm just saying, we cannot just sit back and think that, it's all rosy and whatever. And my final point is, let's teach our children to make something together. We especially Negroes, we all about spending. I asked the students one time at the college, if you win some money today, what are you going to do with it? Miss, I buying this, I buying that. I buy my cousin house. If you win $1 million, I buy my cousin house, I buy a car, I buy. Before, as the moment you start to buy, the money done. But the Indian concept is, I will let money make money for me. So we want and the Indians sell us everything they know we need. When you want $25, they send you for $75. But look at how they dress. And I can tell you right here in Grenada, a lot of them are millionaires and you people don't know. They own a lot of properties in residential areas, and some of them don't even live there. So let's be astute. Let's teach our children how to save. Let's make things at home. Let's teach them how to make the sugar cake and the buns and the juices. We have so many things. So we can save on buying all these things from abroad.
Sister Pin, thank you very much. You have made my job quite easy because, as I was saying earlier, I was asked to speak on the pros and cons of the different institutions. And I intentionally stayed away from that. So you have helped me quite well there. Thank you very much. Just as we wrap up, in terms of the yes, no, we are coming there, right? And as we began, right? We spoke of these, right? Don't be fooled by the attractiveness. We see them all the time, right? And we have said, do your due diligence, right? Before you sign the paper, make inquiries, right? Make sure you do that, because as you have also heard me shared, ask yourself, what if? What if? I leave you to ponder on this, right? I know time is catching up on us, so I want to speed up a bit so that we could just run through the other slides. I hope we could. So how do we translate all that we have said, right? This is where we needed to get to. We may not be able to spend much time on this, but we need to translate this. This is where we need to translate it into a budget, right? We need to write it down, right? And I don't think that any one of us here is unaware of the intricacies of preparing a budget, templates and so on as to how to proceed. They're all over. So I'll just share some tips with you as to why it's important that you prepare a budget, and how that can help you, right? And the budget that we are speaking of, it must not be in your head. Let's go to the next slide, right? You must take time and prepare it, right? When you prepare a budget, right, some practical tips. Set aside time to construct your budget. You need to put aside time. Don't prepare the budget when you remember, but it's part of your planning. You must set aside time to do your budget. You must conduct an assessment of your financial position when you are doing your planning, when you are preparing your budget. In other words, you must know where you are to determine if I'm going to buy the Mercedes-Benz in 2024 or 2025, right? That includes knowing your financial position. Not just how much I'm earning, but how much debt do I have? And what other obligations I may have maturing, right? You need to document the different sources of income and expenditure and other financial obligations that you have. A lot of the time we guesstimate, right? We don't, and there is evidence because most of the time, these budgets are prepared from historical data. So you have a good enough idea as to what your expenses are. You need to document that. You need to document all of that. When you're looking at your investments, because the return on your investments would form part of your income that you use to sustain yourself as you go along. You need to ascertain the value of the assets that you have and the returns that you are receiving on your investments. We spoke of the interest rates and what you are paying on debt as it relates to compared to what you are receiving on your savings. That is critical. Look at that gap, right? you also need to document all recurring expenditure. And the recurring expenditure is those that you have to pay every month. You have to pay your utilities every month, right? You have to pay the interest on your loan every month. You have to pay transportation, right? Fees. You know what they are, right? And also the time we are frightened to put them on paper. Because when we get halfway, we realize, look, it doesn't make sense, right? It may not make sense immediately, but it eventually would. And we need to focus, right, what is coming, right? If we have investments, we know what is coming. Based on the decision that you make now, if you put monies in a susu, for example, you're supposed to know when you get your hand, right? So if you get the first hand, know that you have already spent that money. Maybe an advice might be, let me not spend a lot of money if I get the first hand. Well, let me put it aside and let me spend it according to what I pay, right? Because sometimes you realize that you're not paying and you have not seen what you do. So you're about the fridge, right? And then you wondering, well, why am I paying? Somebody may argue, well, this also might be a good interest-free loan, right? But it has got more complicated now, right? And you need to prioritize, friends. As we speak about goals and objectives earlier, you need to prioritize. You need to determine what is it that I must achieve within the next 3 months, 6 months to a year? What is it that I want to achieve within the next 5 years? And what is it I want to achieve long term? To your point, you won't get the loan, you won't be able to save to build a home. But if you prioritize, over a period of time, you can allocate. So when you decide to build that home, you are not getting 100% financing from the institution, but you would have already saved 20%. You have some skin in the game. So you're not borrowing 200,000. You may be borrowing 160. Because what is the impact of that? Your interest cost is less, but you have equity in your property. So when another instance comes that you may need to take out a loan, you do not have to give the institution a bill of sale on your car because you have a long-term loan and you have equity in your property, right? That's where the saving is important. So we need to decide how we do that. And you cannot see everything down the line. But if we take a conscious look, we have kids going to school, right? The school cycle is 5 years and 5 years and 2 years, right? Don't wait until it is time to go to college and you realize, look, I didn't cater for that. So set your goals and determine what your objectives are. Let's move on. Right? And this slide was added in terms of why we must budget. And we have spoken about it. I want to go to the very last one. Right? I trust you can read the rest. And the presentation would be here for you to share. I like the last one. Right? Your financial wealth determines your mental health. That's the message I want to leave with you tonight. And we spoke of all of the reasons why that is the case. Do we want to leave our kids in debt? Do we want to live a life of poverty? Right? We do not want, when we get to the age of retirement, that we still have big mortgages and so on to pay. Right? Your debt can kill you. Right? That's the message that I want to leave with you. Let's talk. Right? I know there are a couple questions that we didn't touch on, right? Investments, right? Keeping it simple, what are the investment opportunities that are available to us? We live in a society that we believe a lot of the times when we speak about investment, we are depositing some monies in a financial institution and getting a return. That is a very small slice of it. Someone mentioned lands, right? Buying a piece of land. There was a time that when we think about buying land, the next question was, I don't want to live there. Because the thought is, when I think about buying a piece of land, I'm thinking that, do I want to live in Springs? Or am I buying this piece of land, as an investment? That down the line, even though I did not decide to live in Springs, the value would have appreciated, as my friend said a while ago, and I can now sell it, right, for a price that is surplus to what I bought it for years ago. Brother said that earlier on tonight when he went to the financial institution and they did not see it fit to give him a loan and what the cost of the land is today. When we open a business, we are investing, right? And that is why before we get into any business decision, make any decision to invest in a business, we need to ensure that we get some financial advice. Who is my market? How am I financing that business? Is that business going to be sustainable? Do I have the time and commitment to be part of that business? When we invest in our kids, when we give them a good education, we are making an investment for the future. Because if we put aside the savings now, so that when they are ready to go to school, the funds are available, it means that, one, you don't have to mortgage your property, right? And then you don't have to depend on the kids to take care of you, because you have done that investment, right? Some of us believe that we send the kids to school, so when they start working, they have to take care of the home and take care of us. Huh? We don't. That's not how we want our kids to see us, right? But it starts at a very early age in terms of the financial coaching that you give them and you making the right financial decisions, right? What opportunities exist now for investment, right? That's a hard question to answer, right? We look at the financial system, and we look at interest rates and mortgages and land loans and so on are trending downwards. So maybe it's a good opportunity to invest in land because the rates are nice. That's one of the strongest investment now you may be able to get involved in. There may be opportunities for business, right? With innovation and technology trending the way it is. But you must have the know-how. You must surround yourself with the right people who would advise you as to how to move forward, right? Investments are a cycle, and it comes back to a bottom line that when you put some skin in the game, you expect to get a return. So if you invest 100,000, you expect to get back your 100,000 and something a little more, right? In the wider market, there are investment instruments, different papers that you can invest in. We are not so fortunate here to have different forms of investment, and even when you do have them, you want to ensure that you have a mixed bag of investments. In other words, whatever funds you may have available to invest, you need to look at a pool. So don't put all your money in one financial institution, or don't buy lands with all your funds, right? Because you also want to ensure that when you invest, you leave some room for liquidity, right? In other words, when are these investments going to mature, or the returns that I get on that investment, is it going to be able to sustain me for a period of time that I have some expectation, right? Time doesn't allow us to get deep into it, but when you invest, you must look at the relationship within maturity. How long I'm investing for, what is the return, and the risk that is involved, and how close or how far that money is away from me. So if you invest in a piece of land, you know the land is there. If you invest in a fixed deposit, you know it's there, right? If you invest in a business, the return on that may or may not come back, but it may take a while. Make sure you have the know-how. If you invest in something outside, right, that is intangible, well, good luck, right? Because we know our environment now does not facilitate that, right? The financial system. My sister spoke candidly about it. So thank you very much. I don't have to speak about the financial system again because time is catching up. No, just go back one quickly. Yeah. Right. Expectations. Borrowers always want the lowest rates and loans. We know that. So when you go to the bank or another financial institution, you want to get the minimum rate, or you should be aiming to get the minimum rate, especially on longer term loans. For some reason, we are so busy now to get the monies that sometimes we don't think about the rates. Of course, the financial institution would like to charge you the highest rate that they could, because they must make money for their shareholders. right? And if you don't read the fine prints, you don't ask about the fees. The rate may look attractive, but the add-on fees and so on, right, can add up, right? And that's why if you look at the financial sector, you realize that consumption loans are very easy to get, as compared to a loan for a mortgage to build a house. Why? Because if you should go to take a consumption loan, the rate is 10% upwards, right? Your salary is tied to an institution, and they love to give you money, right? As compared to a mortgage, which is a longer-term relationship, the interest rates are lower. It's going to take a longer time for the bank to recover, despite the fact that it has the security. So they're quick to give you a consumption loan because that's where they make their monies. If we should do an assessment and we look at the financial sector now, everybody have a consumption loan, right? And we heard it many times tonight. We are not buying lands. And when we decide to build, we're already heavily in debt, but we still want very extravagant homes. And nothing is wrong with that, if you could afford it, right? Just some lessons that we need to pay attention to, right? And while we are doing that, savers want to get a good return on their money, right? And those rates don't exist now. Sister Matunia said earlier that the value of money is not having to sit down there. So if you can get the rate in the financial institution, how do you invest that money to get a return, right? What sort of investment opportunities are there, right? What sort of investment instruments you put your funds in, right? Someone asked earlier, as it relates to wealth and rich, and whether or not the environment here facilitates that, right? I would say that wealth is relative. Let us focus on net worth. Let us seek to have more assets than liability. In other words, let us aim for the longer term to know that the value of my assets is worth more than the debt that I have, right? And you do not have to be working for a very large salary because you could be working for super salary, and you're more indebted than the person who works for a very small salary, because there is a relationship within your spending and your lifestyle based on the income that you earn, right? If we want to get rich or we want to acquire wealth, let us go back to the goals and the objectives. Let us start somewhere. Let us see where we are now, and as a result of where we are now, let us set some short-term goals, medium-term goals. You monitor those as you go along, and eventually we might get there, right? Because we know the market as is, and the issue of inflation now, as was shared earlier, would erode the value of the dollar that we have before us. The floor is yours.
Like what Sister Payne was saying in relation to the Indians, I believe the reason they're more successful than our black people in Grenada in our own country is because they pull together, they come together as one. So if they have to maybe bring some products in, they might come together as one and do a container among themselves. Whereas a black man in Grenada, we don't want to come together to do stuff because we're thinking about the money. Who go make the most money, things like that. And if you look at the Indians, most of the money, it don't really come back to our economy because the bank in their country. So I think that's one of the reasons as well.
Well, that is, I don't like the black and the Grenada. But what I can say is that as a society, I think we need to become more entrepreneurial. As we go through the school system, and some of us have read that long time ago, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? We go through a system that we are taught the system is designed that you go through the school system and then you find a job. We don't go through the school system with the intention of becoming our own employers, right? Becoming our own business persons. And like it or not, we are a society that is very risk-averse. Right? History shows that when you take a lot of risk, unless you have some back activity, and you consolidate, as you said, you don't last long. Right? So that's something else, and as COVID has taught us, right? We need to be more agile. There are lots more opportunities now that never existed before, right? A simple thing as not having to go to the financial institution, but being able to pay your bill online, right? Saves time, and time is money. You don't have to use gas, you don't have to use your transport. So there are emerging opportunities, but we need to be forward-thinking. You know, we need to know what is happening around us. In other words, as I said earlier, we need to mind our business. We need to set our goals and objectives. We need to be honest. We need to stick to the plan. And when we need advice, sought advice. I thank you.
All right, so let's give him a round of applause again. I think it was, I can speak for everyone when I say it was an incredibly fruitful discussion. I know that we have learned a lot. I'm pretty sure we would want to probably do a rerun, Brother Charles. So prepare yourself. The intention is to continue to do programs like these because we believe it's going to edify the church, you know, in its fullness. These are things that people are interested in. And we do appreciate the time. We appreciate you coming and really engaging with us, again, in such a simplistic and effective way. So we give God thanks for you, and we really do look forward to having those continued discussions. Maybe we might slant it differently, but we definitely intend to continue having those discussions. So we thank you once again. At this juncture, I would invite Pastor Stanford to kindly close us off. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my dear friend, Devon Charles. Give him a round of applause. Really, really, really good session. And I said there, I always said, the question of us, if you're self-employed, paying yourself a salary. That is critical. And I learned that from the credit union. You need to pay yourself a salary if you're self-employed. And a lot of Grenadians are not paying themselves a salary. They live off the business. And that is the biggest danger and failure for a lot of small businesses because they spend the money like it's theirs. Think about it, if you have a business, just think about it for a minute. You have a business and you're living, you're paying your bills off the business, you're buying food off the business, you're going to the doctor off the business, and then you're still taking money for other things. If you take a salary, let's say you take $3,000 a month, you know your $3,000 you had to spend, you'll manage it better, and you wouldn't think about taking it. And then the business could survive much better because you're not touching the money of the business. At the end of the year, when you get your profit margin, you can do what you want with it. But it's important that you take a salary and do not get yourself taking money out of the business. That is critical. And Devon, thank you so much. And let me say to you, the church, and to the public, every third Thursday in the month, we're having a session. It may be on finance next month. It may be on doing a will. There are different things that we would do. I'm sure we'll have Mr. Devon Charles back some point in the year. But we want to educate persons. The church have failed the society because all we have done every time we come into church to talk about the Bible and talk about God, get into heaven. What we have not, we have taught people well how to get to heaven. We haven't taught them well how to live on earth. And that's a failure of the church. And I take responsibility too as being part of the church that we need to have a holistic approach to development and encouraging people to start their own business. This church have been doing that. We have over 6 or 7 businesses have started in the last 5 years here in our church. And so we encourage the Keystone Business Network, and we are working hard to see you develop as a person. And you, the public, We as a church is thankful for the opportunity you give us now to come into your private homes to share with you this evening. And I have thanks again to Mr. Devon Charles, manager of the Grenville Credit Union, who continue to do very well in this country as a credit union because of his leadership, and also this church as we open ourselves to the possibility of educating you to become better versed when it comes to finances. Stand with me as we dismiss, and I look forward in seeing you in church on Sunday morning. It's Fourth Sunday, where we dress down and we come prepared. You never know what would happen. You never know who we're interviewing. And we also take up every now and Thursday night, we have an offering, and we call Bethel Soup Kitchen. Sister Rosie feed. We have over 45 families she feed twice a week on Wednesdays and on Saturdays. Twice a week, families are fed. So as I pray, I'll ask the blessing, and the plate, she pass from the offering plate, and you'll give accordingly. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for who you are. Thank you for tonight. Thank you for Mr. Devon Charles. We pray you continue to bless him and strengthen him and sustain him and his family. Thank you for Grenville Credit Union, the work they have been doing throughout this land. Lord, we thank you for this church, and we thank you for all of us, Lord, who have listened tonight. Lord, we have learned, and Lord, something we can do much more with our lives and our finances. We pray a blessing over our strength and wisdom to make good financial decisions. We pray a blessing over the offering, God, as we give to feed the poor and the hungry. And so we ask you, go with us as we go to our homes and our families. This we ask in Jesus' holy and precious name. Amen. Amen. Thank you who are here for coming, and thank all of you who are listening online and have shared here with us today. We are thankful and grateful. We wish you God richest blessing, speed, and peace. God's richest blessing. Thank you for being with us tonight. God bless you. Bye-bye.